Do you really think you can outshine me tonight? Logan Caldwell's voice cut through the hum of the awards hall, dripping with the kind of arrogance that used to shake her to the core. Madeline Carter paused at the entrance, her emerald silk gown clinging like liquid, catching the glow from the chandeliers that seemed to stretch endlessly above the marble floors. The room was a symphony of power and pretense, tuxedos and sequin gowns reflecting the soft, golden light, the faint scent of expensive perfume and champagne hanging in the air like a challenge. Chloe Summers clung to Logan's arm, her laughter high and calculated, the kind of sound that once would have pierced Madeline's chest like glass. But not tonight. Tonight, she was neither fragile nor unseen. Each step she took echoed with the rhythm of years spent reclaiming herself, years of quiet victories in boardrooms and late nights filled with ambition and meticulous planning. Her pulse was steady, a measured cadence under the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. She remembered every slight, every whispered insult, every moment Logan had made her feel small, and she let them wash over her not as pain, but as fuel. Around her, the crowd continued its dance of appearances, unaware that the night was about to shift on its axis. Madeline's eyes swept over the familiar faces who had once whispered behind her back, now caught in the delicate tension of expectation. A flicker of something like triumph touched her lips, subtle but potent. She could feel the weight of her past being shed with every deliberate stride, the silk of her gown swishing against polished marble, the subtle scent of her confidence mingling with the air of opulence. Logan's gaze caught hers for a moment, his smirk tightening as he registered the controlled power in her posture, the calm fire in her eyes that had once been buried beneath fear and uncertainty. Chloe's attempt at a dazzling smile faltered as she sensed the shift, the silent assertion that this was no longer a room where Madeline would cower or fade into the background. Every detail of the scene, the glittering chandeliers, the soft murmur of conversations, the faint sparkle of champagne in the glasses, became part of her tableau, a stage set for the inevitable turn. And as she neared the center of the room, the whispered murmurs began to ripple through the crowd, the undercurrent of surprise, curiosity, and anticipation building with every calculated step. Madeline's hand rested lightly at her side, her spine straight, her gaze unflinching, drawing the invisible thread of power she had woven from the remnants of a past life, a life Logan thought he had controlled. The first flash of realization crossed his face as he glimpsed her full presence, the composure, the quiet but undeniable authority she carried, and the faintest crack appeared in his confidence. It was only the beginning, a single spark before the fire, but in that moment, the room seemed to hold its breath, sensing that the story they thought they knew was about to be rewritten in ways none of them could yet imagine. Madeline moved through the crowded ballroom with deliberate grace, each step measured, a soft swish of her gown marking the rhythm of her confidence. The murmur of conversations and the gentle clinking of glasses faded into a background hum as her mind drifted to the months of preparation that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the countless hours spent at her design firm, negotiating contracts, perfecting details, and asserting her vision in spaces where she had once been overlooked, the quiet victories stacking like bricks forming a fortress around her resolve. Her eyes swept across the familiar faces, some friendly, some indifferent, all unprepared for the presence she now radiated. The warm golden light from the chandeliers highlighted the deep green of her dress, the delicate embroidery catching the shimmer of crystal like a subtle declaration of her transformation. Every glance from the guests seemed to affirm what she already knew. She was no longer the woman who had once doubted her worth. The echo of a soft laugh from Chloe drew her attention to Logan, standing tall yet uneasy, the pride he had worn like armor now showing subtle cracks under the weight of her calm authority. Madeline felt a steady thrill of satisfaction, not from revenge, but from the quiet demonstration of her evolution, the evidence of resilience and achievement that required no words to announce itself. As she approached the center of the room, the subtle scent of her signature perfume mingled with the opulent notes of the gala, creating an invisible halo that drew eyes subtly, insistently, toward her. In that moment, time seemed to contract. A pulse of anticipation threading through the crowd as she acknowledged familiar acquaintances with a polite nod, her posture impeccable, her smile composed but charged with the power of experience. Memories of sleepless nights and whispered doubts flickered briefly in her mind, quickly replaced by the clarity of presence and purpose she had cultivated. Each internal struggle transformed into a quiet strength that informed her every movement. Logan's gaze followed her, unsettled by the poise she displayed, the magnetic calm that contrasted starkly with the tense energy radiating from Chloe, whose attempts at charm now seemed forced and brittle. Madeline allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile at the realization that she no longer required external validation. The subtle acknowledgement of her own growth and control was enough. The conversations and laughter around her continued, but she moved through them like a current beneath the surface, imperceptibly shifting the energy, commanding attention without speaking, demonstrating influence through presence alone. Each step forward was a reaffirmation of her journey, a silent testament to years of endurance and the strategic reclamation of her own narrative. The room seemed to bend slightly to her rhythm, a theater of light and reflection emphasizing the contrast between past vulnerability and present mastery. Every detail of the space enhancing the story she embodied in real time, an evolving performance of dignity and power quietly acknowledged by all who glimpsed it. Madeline paused at the center of the ballroom, the soft golden light bouncing off the crystal chandeliers onto her emerald gown, creating an aura of quiet authority that seemed to demand attention without a single word. The murmurs of the crowd had intensified, their curiosity now mingled with awe as the realization of her presence fully settled in. Dominic Sinclair stepped beside her, his calm, unshakable energy reinforcing her own, a silent signal to everyone that she was no longer a shadow of her past. Logan Caldwell, moments ago radiating confidence, now hesitated mid-step, his gaze locked on Madeline as a flicker of doubt and astonishment crossed his face. Chloe Summers, trying to maintain her composure, faltered under the weight of the silent acknowledgement of Madeline's triumph, the smiles and gestures that once commanded the room now appearing brittle in comparison. Madeline allowed herself a small, controlled smile, one that carried years of strategy, perseverance, and reclaimed dignity, her lips curving ever so slightly as she surveyed the room, noting every reaction, every stolen glance, every flicker of recognition that the world she had once been forced to leave behind was now hers to command. Each heartbeat seemed to echo like a drumbeat of inevitability, the rhythm of her rise and the certainty of her position marking every subtle movement she made. Conversations around her continued, but she moved through them like a current, imperceptibly altering the energy, drawing eyes naturally, effortlessly, toward her presence and the undeniable authority she now embodied. Logan's shoulders tensed, the ease of his previous smirk replaced by a silent calculation, an internal accounting of the shift that had occurred without any dramatic display, no words spoken, only the sheer force of Madeline's presence and the unmistakable signal of Dominic's subtle, steady support. The crowd began to lean in unconsciously, curiosity and admiration intertwining as they watched the interplay of past and present unfold before them. Every flick of a chandelier, every glint of crystal, every whispered murmur became part of the story, a symphony orchestrated by her return, and she moved with the poise of someone who had mastered her own narrative, whose power was silent but omnipresent. As she guided her gaze to familiar faces, acknowledging friends and acquaintances with a composed nod and a steady hand, the room collectively recognized the transformation that had taken place, a metamorphosis from vulnerability to assured mastery, from the shadows into the full brilliance of the spotlight. Logan's eyes followed her, unsettled, as the reality of her success and poise anchored the attention of every guest in the room, Chloe's attempts at drawing focus now seeming faint, almost desperate. And in that charged, golden-hued space, with the soft hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of glasses providing the soundtrack, Madeline held her head high, fully aware of the triumph she had silently achieved, letting the weight of her presence and the quiet certainty of her reclaimed identity speak louder than any confrontation could, leaving the audience suspended in anticipation of what the unfolding night would reveal next. The golden light of the chandeliers seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the room as Madeline moved with deliberate confidence toward the center of the gala, each step measured, precise, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. The subtle scent of her perfume mingled with the warm aroma of champagne and fine hors d'oeuvres, creating an invisible current that drew attention without a word. Dominic Sinclair stayed close, a quiet, steady presence at her side, his tailored tuxedo exuding understated power, a complement to her own poised authority. Guests shifted in their seats, glasses raised mid-toast, their murmurs and polite laughter faltering as they registered the quiet gravity she carried, a presence refined by years of persistence, resilience, and strategic foresight. Logan Caldwell, once brimming with confidence, found his gaze drawn and held, a flicker of recognition and unease crossing his features as the woman he thought he had diminished now commanded every eye with effortless grace. Chloe Summers, attempting to maintain a practiced composure, faltered in the subtle shift of the room, realizing the quiet dominance of Madeline's presence made her own efforts at charm seem hollow. Madeline's movements were deliberate but natural, each step an assertion of autonomy, every gesture measured to communicate poise, strength, and undeniable competence. She allowed herself to notice the softened attention of acquaintances, the whispered reassessments, the gentle hum of curiosity as they unconsciously recalibrated their perceptions. The interplay of light, sound, and reflection painted her in a portrait of subtle power, a living testament to transformation and reclamation. In the soft shadows cast by the chandeliers, her eyes met Dominic's for a fleeting moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They had entered the space as a unit, her reclaimed presence amplified and made undeniable by his support and quiet authority. Logan's jaw tightened imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement that the dynamic had shifted irreversibly, that the woman he had underestimated was now fully realized, her energy and command tangible to anyone in the room. The soft clink of glass and murmur of conversation continued around her, but she moved like a current beneath the surface, altering the energy without breaking the delicate rhythms, drawing subtle glances, quiet recognition, and muted astonishment in her wake. Every breath, every measured glance, every slight lift of her chin told a story of years reclaimed, of confidence painstakingly rebuilt, and of presence cultivated into its purest form. The guests were caught in the balance between admiration and intrigue, sensing the depth of her transformation without a single word spoken, the room itself bending to the narrative of her rise. In that charged atmosphere, Madeline held herself with the steady certainty of someone who had walked through fire and emerged refined, her silent authority leaving the audience suspended in anticipation of the next moment, the unfolding possibilities as magnetic and compelling as the first spark of recognition she had ignited upon entering the hall. The room seemed to hold its breath as Madeline continued to navigate the glittering expanse of the awards hall, her presence like a current that shifted the energy of the space with subtle but undeniable force. Each step on the polished marble floor sent faint echoes, a measured rhythm that underscored the deliberate confidence she carried. Dominic Sinclair remained close, a silent pillar of strength whose calm energy complemented her own poise, their synergy palpable even from across the room. Guests could not help but turn toward her, their eyes tracing the graceful movement of her gown, the emerald silk catching every chandelier light, reflecting a spectrum of rich, deep hues that seemed to command attention. Logan Caldwell lingered at the edge of the crowd, his expression tightening as he attempted to mask the tension that had begun to creep into his stance, Chloe Summers adjusting her posture nervously beside him, aware that the dynamic of the room had shifted irrevocably. Madeline allowed herself a moment to absorb the subtle currents of admiration and curiosity that flowed around her, the polite smiles, the whispered reassessments, the quick glances that lingered longer than expected. She had reclaimed every ounce of power that had been denied to her, and the room responded in kind, acknowledging it without a word. The gentle clink of glasses, the soft hum of conversation, the faint murmur of applause in the distance formed an ambient soundtrack that framed her every motion, emphasizing the contrast between her quiet authority and the flustered energy surrounding Logan and Chloe. Her eyes scanned familiar faces with a composed acknowledgement, nodding lightly, a gesture that conveyed confidence, self-possession, and a subtle reminder of the transformation she had achieved. Each heartbeat reinforced her awareness of the journey she had undertaken, from vulnerability to self-assured mastery, from doubt to the clarity of purpose that now defined her presence. Dominic's hand briefly brushed hers, a small but deliberate signal of unity and strength, underscoring the fact that she was no longer alone, no longer subject to the whims of others, and fully in control of the narrative that unfolded around her. Logan's eyes followed every movement, a silent recognition that the woman he had underestimated was now fully realized, commanding attention, admiration, and respect with an effortless grace. The faint sparkle of crystal and light, the echo of soft conversation, and the warm glow of the chandeliers all conspired to frame her as the center of a story that had once left her unseen and underestimated. Every detail of the room, every reaction of the guests, became part of her silent declaration, a testament to resilience, strategy, and quiet triumph. The air seemed charged, thick with anticipation, as she advanced further into the hall, the presence she carried reshaping the atmosphere, drawing the attention of every observer, and leaving the audience suspended on the edge of discovery, wondering what moments and revelations were still to come as the night unfolded before her. Madeline felt the subtle shift in the room as the guests adjusted to her presence, the faint echo of their whispers and the soft clink of champagne glasses creating a rhythm that accentuated her quiet command. She moved through the crowd with deliberate intention, each gesture measured and precise, her emerald gown flowing seamlessly with every step, catching the golden light in a way that made her presence undeniable. Dominic Sinclair remained close, an unwavering anchor whose composed energy reinforced her own, signaling to anyone who looked that they were a united front, confident and unconquerable. Logan Caldwell lingered at the edge, his attempt at maintaining composure faltering as he watched her navigate the hall, the ease of her movements a silent declaration of authority that he could not undermine. Chloe Summers, still by his side, smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed the recognition that she no longer dominated the attention, that the subtle gravity Madeline now radiated had reshaped the atmosphere entirely. Madeline's thoughts drifted briefly to the long hours, the careful planning, and the quiet victories that had brought her to this moment, the culmination of resilience and strategic reclamation of her own narrative. Every glance she received from acquaintances, every polite nod and whispered comment, served to underscore the transformation she had undergone, the emergence of someone fully realized and impossibly poised. The ambient hum of conversation and laughter became a backdrop, a soft murmur against the steady cadence of her own presence, a living proof of the strength she carried silently, intentionally, without need for words. The subtle sparkle of her gown, the shimmer of the chandeliers above, the warm golden hue of the room, all converged to frame her as the central figure, a quiet epicenter around which attention naturally gravitated. Logan's jaw tightened imperceptibly as he tracked her movements, the confidence he had relied upon now tempered by a dawning awareness that the woman before him was no longer defined by past vulnerability or his previous judgment. Each measured step, each calm inhale, and the faint lift of her chin spoke volumes, communicating years of reclamation, fortitude, and mastery over the narrative that had once been imposed upon her. Dominic's supportive presence reinforced the message without intrusion, allowing Madeline's own authority to shine, undeniable and complete. Guests around them subtly shifted, some leaning in unconsciously, their curiosity and admiration blending into an atmosphere charged with anticipation and silent awe. Madeline maintained perfect composure, her smile slight but potent, the embodiment of grace and power intertwined, demonstrating that her journey had been one of deliberate transformation, quiet victories, and unassailable self-possession. Every movement, every acknowledgement of the room, every glance directed at Logan and Chloe carried the weight of subtle triumph, leaving the audience on edge, fully aware that the night held revelations yet to unfold, and that the presence of Madeline and Dominic would continue to reshape every expectation as the evening progressed. The soft glow of the chandeliers illuminated the entire hall as Madeline moved with unshakable poise toward the center, her emerald gown flowing like liquid silk, catching the warm light with every step. Dominic Sinclair remained at her side, a quiet and steady presence that reinforced her authority without words, the perfect balance of power and composure. Guests subtly shifted in their seats, whispers carrying through the room, eyes lingering on her, drawn to the calm confidence that radiated from every motion, every measured gesture. Logan Caldwell's expression faltered as he followed her movements, the ease with which she commanded attention eroding the pretense he had relied upon, Chloe Summers trying to mask her unease with a strained smile. Madeline allowed herself a brief glance around the hall, noticing the subtle adjustments in posture and focus from every observer, realizing that the quiet assertion of her presence was more impactful than any confrontation could have been. Each heartbeat resonated in time with the faint clinking of glasses and the soft hum of conversation, an invisible drum marking the rhythm of her silent triumph. Memories of long nights and careful strategy flitted through her mind, each challenge she had faced and overcome crystallizing into the undeniable authority she now wielded effortlessly. Dominic's presence beside her, calm and unwavering, offered not only support but a reflection of the respect she had earned, a silent testament to the unity and shared purpose they projected. Every detail of the gala, the sparkling chandeliers, the gentle ambient music, the soft murmur of elite guests, framed her as the central figure, a living emblem of resilience, strategic reclamation, and grace. Logan's eyes darted from her to Dominic, his carefully constructed composure slowly giving way to the realization that the balance of power had shifted irreversibly, and Chloe's attempts to maintain influence felt increasingly fragile in comparison. Madeline's gaze swept the room, taking in familiar faces, nodding politely, acknowledging acquaintances with a refined gesture that conveyed both warmth and authority, each subtle movement reinforcing her unassailable presence. The quiet energy of anticipation thickened around her, the ambient sounds blending with the soft swish of her gown, each detail underscoring the transformation from the past into the fully realized, commanding figure she had become. Every glance exchanged, every whisper, every small act of recognition reflected the undeniable shift, the invisible threads of influence and respect now bending naturally to her presence. The room seemed to pulse in time with her composure, a symphony of subdued admiration and curiosity, capturing the essence of her journey from doubt to mastery. Madeline held herself with unwavering confidence, Dominic at her side amplifying the effect of her presence, leaving Logan and Chloe caught in silent acknowledgement of her quiet but complete triumph. The scene held a suspended tension, every observer aware that the unfolding evening had been irrevocably altered by the calm, commanding return of someone who had mastered her own narrative, leaving all anticipation of what would follow hanging in the golden-hued air of the gala. Madeline and Dominic glided through the glittering ballroom, the polished marble reflecting every soft footfall and the warm glow of the chandeliers above, creating an atmosphere that felt both intimate and charged with anticipation. The low hum of conversation and the gentle clink of crystal glasses provided a delicate soundtrack to her entrance, each note reinforcing the quiet authority she carried with every measured step. Guests turned instinctively, their eyes drawn to the poised figure in the emerald gown, the subtle shimmer of silk tracing every curve with elegance, a visual testament to the careful preparation and personal transformation she had undertaken over the past months. Dominic's steady presence beside her offered both support and a subtle assertion of influence, his composed demeanor signaling to all that she was the focal point of the evening, commanding attention effortlessly and without overt declaration. Logan Caldwell's confident mask wavered as he observed the scene, his posture tightening, the carefully maintained arrogance now tempered by an involuntary acknowledgement of her undeniable presence, while Chloe Summers attempted to maintain composure, aware that every smile, every gesture, every whispered conversation now orbited around Madeline's influence. Each step she took was deliberate, a symphony of poise, her internal rhythm syncing with the ambient flow of the gala, a choreography honed through years of strategic planning and quiet assertion of self. Her gaze swept over familiar faces, acknowledging friends and colleagues with subtle nods and gentle smiles, small but deliberate gestures that communicated mastery, grace, and confidence without a word spoken, each interaction reinforcing her reclaimed presence. The air seemed to shift around her, a subtle current carrying the weight of recognition, admiration, and respect that extended to the edges of the room, leaving Logan and Chloe acutely aware of the transformation that had taken place. The soft reflections of crystal and golden light accentuated her every movement, creating an aura that was as commanding as it was composed, a visual narrative of resilience and triumph. Conversations continued around her, but she moved through them with the quiet authority of someone who had learned the power of presence, turning the collective attention naturally toward her while maintaining an impeccable balance of warmth and distance. Dominic's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent signal of unity and shared purpose, reinforcing the visual impact of their partnership without intrusion, allowing her to remain the undeniable center of focus. Logan's expression hardened imperceptibly, the shift in dynamics impossible to ignore, and Chloe's attempts at drawing attention seemed increasingly hollow as the room responded to Madeline's effortless command. Every subtle motion, every controlled glance, every composed gesture worked in concert to assert her reclaimed authority, leaving a trail of anticipation and silent awe in the ambient gold-lit space. The guests absorbed the display, each whispered word, each glance, each slight movement contributing to a tapestry of admiration and intrigue as the evening unfolded around her, marking the undeniable ascent of someone who had quietly but irrevocably transformed the narrative of her own life. Madeline paused near the grand staircase, letting the subtle hum of the gala envelop her, the golden light from the chandeliers glinting off her emerald gown like liquid fire. Dominic Sinclair's presence beside her added a quiet gravity, his composed posture a perfect counterbalance to her poised intensity. She inhaled deeply, the soft aroma of champagne and polished marble filling her senses, anchoring her in the moment, each breath measured, deliberate. Guests shifted subtly as she advanced, whispers trailing in her wake, their curiosity and admiration tangible, eyes lingering longer than etiquette would dictate. Logan Caldwell's confident mask faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his features as he realized the woman he had underestimated commanded the room with effortless authority, her every motion a quiet assertion of control and power. Chloe Summers attempted a practiced smile, her attempts at charm faltering under the unspoken presence that Madeline exuded, a force that required no words yet spoke volumes to anyone paying attention. Each step she took across the polished marble was synchronized with the soft clinking of glasses and murmured conversations, an invisible rhythm that amplified her calm dominance. She allowed herself a fleeting glance at familiar faces, nodding subtly, acknowledging their attention without interruption, a small gesture of confidence that communicated mastery and unassailable poise. The room seemed to bend subtly to her narrative, the golden glow of light reflecting off crystal and glass, accentuating the transformation she had undergone, the quiet reclamation of agency and presence that left Logan and Chloe unsettled. Dominic's hand brushed hers momentarily, a silent reaffirmation of unity and the strength of their partnership, reinforcing the subtle command of attention she carried without ostentation. The low hum of music and ambient conversation became a canvas for her presence, the gentle sway of her gown, the poised lift of her chin, and the deliberate calm in her eyes weaving a story of resilience, confidence, and unspoken triumph. Logan's gaze tracked every movement, his attempts at composure weakening as he noted the way attention gravitated naturally toward Madeline, the subtle contrast between her effortless elegance and Chloe's strained efforts highlighting the shift of power. Each deliberate gesture, measured step, and quiet acknowledgement of the crowd further solidified her reclaimed authority, the room, responding instinctively to her presence. The subtle lighting, reflections in crystal, and soft murmurs amplified the impression she projected, every detail underscoring the transformation from the woman of the past to the fully realized, commanding figure before them. The energy in the room held in suspension, guests leaning in subtly, whispers carrying curiosity and recognition, all conspiring to frame Madeline and Dominic as the central axis of the evening, their combined presence redefining the atmosphere. Every eye drawn to them, every subtle change in posture and attention, silently testified to her journey, the careful accumulation of confidence, poise, and strategy that had brought her to this unassailable moment, leaving the audience eager and breathless for the unfolding developments that would inevitably follow. Madeline paused near the center of the awards hall, her gaze sweeping across the room, the soft golden light from the chandeliers catching the shimmer of her emerald gown, reflecting her composed strength and quiet authority. Dominic Sinclair stood at her side, his presence calm and steady, a silent reinforcement of the influence she now carried effortlessly, every gesture measured and deliberate. The gentle murmur of conversations and the subtle clinking of glasses faded into the background as attention naturally gravitated toward her, drawn by the magnetic combination of poise, confidence, and silent power she exuded. Logan Caldwell's earlier bravado had dissolved into subtle tension, his posture rigid, eyes betraying recognition of the transformation before him, while Chloe Summers attempted to maintain her composure, aware that the energy of the room had shifted completely. Madeline allowed herself a brief, controlled smile, acknowledging a few acquaintances with polite nods, gestures that communicated both elegance and command, reinforcing the undeniable impression that she had reclaimed the space with both grace and precision. Each step she took across the polished marble echoed softly, an imperceptible rhythm that seemed to sync with the ambient hum of the gala, a cadence that drew attention without any overt effort. The glint of crystal, the warm ambient lighting, the subtle scent of perfume, and the faint aroma of champagne created an atmosphere in which every detail accentuated her presence and the narrative of resilience and mastery she had built over the past months. Dominic's hand brushed hers momentarily, a subtle signal of unity and shared authority that strengthened the silent declaration of her prominence. Guests unconsciously leaned toward her path, their reactions, whispered comments, raised eyebrows, small smiles, underscoring the transformation from the woman of the past to the figure of poise and influence standing before them. Logan's eyes followed every motion, a quiet calculation evident in his expression, while Chloe's attempts at diversion seemed fragile and increasingly inconsequential in the face of Madeline's command of attention. The subtle interplay of light, reflection, and ambient sound framed her as the axis of the evening, every flicker of the chandeliers amplifying the elegance of her movements, the soft rhythm of conversation providing contrast to her steady, commanding presence. Each acknowledgement of the crowd, every gesture and glance, reinforced the narrative she carried silently, an accumulation of perseverance, strategy, and quiet triumph that now defined her interaction with the room. The energy of the gala, previously diffused across multiple points, now orbited around Madeline and Dominic, creating an almost imperceptible but undeniable gravitational pull, leaving observers, including Logan and Chloe, acutely aware of the shift in dynamic and the mastery with which she had orchestrated her return. In that suspended moment, as the room absorbed the breadth of her presence and the subtle power she projected, anticipation hung in the golden-lit air, every guest sensing that the evening had been irrevocably transformed and that further revelations and moments of triumph were yet to unfold around her. The moment Madeline reached the center of the grand ballroom, the subtle hum of conversation and clinking glasses seemed to quiet, replaced by an almost imperceptible tension that threaded through the room. Every eye subtly followed her, captivated by the effortless authority she radiated, the way her emerald gown shimmered under the soft glow of the chandeliers, and the graceful precision of her movements. Dominic Sinclair's presence beside her added depth to her influence, his quiet composure amplifying her command without words, a partnership built on mutual understanding and subtle power. Logan Caldwell's confident posture faltered as he watched her navigate the space, the earlier arrogance now replaced by a keen awareness of the transformation she embodied, while Chloe Summers attempted to maintain composure, realizing that her presence no longer carried the dominance she once assumed. Madeline allowed herself a measured smile, acknowledging acquaintances with a poised nod, each gesture deliberate, communicating confidence, mastery, and the quiet assertion of her reclaimed space. The ambient murmur of conversation and the gentle clatter of crystal glasses became a backdrop to her entrance. Every subtle shift in attention, every glance and whispered observation reinforcing her authority and presence. The air seemed to bend around her, the golden-hued light catching the subtle contours of her gown and the soft sheen of her hair, creating a visual symphony that drew attention naturally, effortlessly. Dominic's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent signal of unity and strength, reinforcing the aura of shared command and quiet confidence that she projected. Guests unconsciously leaned in, their curiosity, admiration, and subtle awe blending into the charged atmosphere, their focus settling on the interplay of her composed grace and Dominic's understated power. Logan's eyes followed every step, a silent calculation apparent as he registered the shift in the room, the subtle but undeniable evidence that Madeline had claimed the center of attention and the respect of all who observed. Every measured step, every glance, and each acknowledgement of the crowd spoke volumes, a quiet testament to her resilience, strategic thinking, and deliberate reclamation of authority. The gentle movement of her gown, the soft murmur of the crowd, and the golden reflections of the chandeliers combined to amplify her presence, emphasizing the transformation from the woman who had once been overlooked to the fully realized figure commanding the space. Each interaction, each subtle acknowledgement, further solidified her position, the room itself bending to the rhythm of her presence. Logan and Chloe were forced to confront the quiet but undeniable power she now held, and as she paused briefly, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd with calm assurance, the tension in the room crystallized into silent recognition, leaving the audience suspended in anticipation of the next unfolding moment, fully aware that her mastery over the scene was absolute, and that every subsequent interaction would be colored by the unspoken dominance she now carried. Madeline held her head high as the room seemed to adjust to her presence, the golden light of the chandeliers tracing every contour of her emerald gown, each reflection amplifying the quiet authority she radiated. Dominic Sinclair's steady presence beside her reinforced the silent power she projected, the two of them moving as a unit through the glittering crowd, commanding attention effortlessly without a word spoken. The ambient murmur of conversation, the soft clink of glasses, and the faint fragrance of perfume and fine champagne created a rich tapestry of sensation that framed her every motion, enhancing the impression of controlled mastery and elegance. Logan Caldwell's composure had now visibly shifted, his confident mask replaced by subtle tension as he tracked her movements, realizing that the woman he had once underestimated now dominated the atmosphere with an undeniable presence. Chloe Summers' practiced smile faltered in response, her attempts at influence weakened by the quiet gravity Madeline emanated, the delicate balance of the gala tilting imperceptibly in her favor. Madeline's eyes swept across the room, pausing on familiar faces, offering gentle nods and composed acknowledgement, gestures that communicated both warmth and inescapable command, reinforcing the perception of her complete reclamation of the space. Every step she took across the polished marble resonated softly, a subtle rhythm in harmony with the ambient sounds of the gala, an invisible signal of authority that drew attention naturally, compellingly, without a single word. The soft reflections from crystal and the warm glow of chandeliers highlighted her every movement, creating a visual symphony that underscored the strategic reclamation of her presence and narrative. Dominic's brief, subtle touch on her arm reinforced their partnership and the silent assertion of influence, amplifying the impact of her poised, measured authority. Guests unconsciously leaned toward her path, their curiosity, admiration, and quiet awe creating an atmosphere thick with expectation and recognition, while Logan and Chloe struggled to maintain the illusion of control, aware that their presence no longer dictated the room. Each deliberate motion, every controlled glance, and subtle acknowledgement of the crowd spoke volumes, a testament to her resilience, calculated preparation, and the refined confidence she now embodied fully. The interplay of light, reflection, and ambient sound framed her as the center of the evening, a focal point around which attention naturally gravitated, leaving observers suspended in anticipation, their collective awareness acknowledging the full measure of her silent, but complete triumph. In that moment, the subtle shifts in posture, eye contact, and whispered attention coalesced into an unmistakable aura of authority, every element of the gala bending to highlight the transformation from the woman of vulnerability to a figure of calm, commanding influence, leaving the room and its guests poised on the edge of what was yet to unfold, fully cognizant of the power she now held. The room held its collective breath as Madeline and Dominic moved toward the center of the ballroom, the golden light from the chandeliers reflecting off her emerald gown and casting soft, shimmering highlights that accentuated every poised movement. The subtle hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of glasses seemed to pause, creating a suspended moment in which all eyes were drawn naturally to her, captivated by the quiet authority and composed elegance she radiated. Dominic's calm presence beside her reinforced the unspoken power she carried, a quiet alignment that amplified the attention she commanded without a single word. Logan Caldwell's expression tightened as he followed her progress, the confidence he had relied upon wavering in the face of her undeniable presence, while Chloe Summers struggled to maintain her composure, the earlier veneer of charm faltering under the weight of Madeline's silent dominance. Each step she took across the polished marble echoed softly, a measured rhythm that harmonized with the ambient murmur of the gala, the soft fragrance of perfume and fine champagne mingling with the polished space to frame her every movement. Madeline allowed herself subtle acknowledgments, a gentle nod here, a composed smile there, gestures that conveyed warmth, self-possession, and unassailable authority, leaving no doubt that she now controlled the narrative of the room. The reflections of crystal and glass scattered the light in patterns that seemed to follow her, creating a visual symphony that underscored her transformation, her rise from past vulnerability to present mastery, each nuance a silent statement of the journey she had undertaken. Dominic's hand briefly brushed hers, a subtle reinforcement of shared strength and unity, signaling to the room that she was no longer alone in her influence, that their combined presence was a force both elegant and formidable. Guests shifted subtly in their seats, leaning in, exchanging glances of quiet admiration and curiosity, their reactions underscoring the magnetic authority she projected effortlessly. Logan's jaw tightened, a quiet acknowledgement of the shift that had occurred, the awareness that his former assumptions about her were now irreversibly challenged, while Chloe's attempts at drawing attention seemed increasingly inconsequential as Madeline held the room in calm command. Every element of the ballroom, the warm ambient light, the gentle sway of her gown, the soft rhythm of conversation, and the faint sparkle of crystal, worked in harmony to accentuate the subtle but powerful narrative of her triumph. The guests, caught in the interplay of anticipation and silent recognition, absorbed the full measure of her presence, sensing that the evening had been irrevocably shaped by her quiet mastery. Madeline's gaze swept the room one final time, taking in the faces of friends and acquaintances, a small, composed smile curving her lips, a statement of dignity, strength, and the unassailable triumph of her reclaimed identity. In the golden-hued air of the gala, every eye followed her, every subtle motion, glance, and gesture underscored the totality of her journey, leaving Logan and Chloe to reconcile with the undeniable reality that she had returned fully empowered, commanding the room with silent, undeniable authority, and leaving all observers suspended in anticipation of what her presence might reveal next.